Hi everyone, I'm Freya, host of the Sharing English podcast, and welcome back to U.S. Government Explained, a mini-series that takes a closer look at how the American system of government really works, from the founding principles to the modern debates shaping it today. In our last episode, we talked about democracy and Republican government, what those words mean, and how the U.S. fits into that picture. Today, we're going to explore the U.S. Constitution, the founding document that defines how the American government operates, protects citizens' rights, and continues to evolve after more than 2 centuries. Let's start in the mid-1780s. The American Revolution had recently ended, and the new United States was free from Britain. But independence came with a huge challenge. How would this brand new country actually govern itself? The first attempt was something called the Articles of Confederation. It created a very loose connection between the 13 states, more like a friendship than a strong government. Each state kept most of its power, and the national government could barely tax or enforce laws. It soon became clear that this system didn't work. The country was deep in debt, trade was chaotic, and the government was too weak to handle national problems. So, in 1787, delegates from 12 of the 13 states met in Philadelphia for what they called the Constitutional Convention. Their original goal was to revise the Articles of Confederation. But once discussions began, they decided to start over entirely. What followed was 4 months of debate, compromise, and creative problem-solving that would shape the foundation of the U.S. government. 55 delegates attended the Constitutional Convention. Most were wealthy, educated men, landowners, lawyers, merchants, and political leaders of their states. Among them were some of the most famous figures in American history. George Washington, who was chosen to preside over the convention. James Madison, who became known as the father of the Constitution for his central role in writing and promoting it. Benjamin Franklin, one of the oldest delegates, whose wisdom and diplomacy helped keep discussions civil. And Alexander Hamilton, who strongly supported a powerful central government. But it's also important to remember who wasn't there. There were no women, no enslaved people, and no Native Americans represented at the table. The Constitution, while revolutionary in many ways, was written by and for a narrow segment of society, something the country has had to confront and expand ever since. The Constitution is surprisingly short, just over 4,000 words, but it's one of the most influential political documents in history. It begins with the famous preamble, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union." That phrase, "we, the people," was a radical idea at the time. It declared that government's power comes from its citizens, not a king or a distant parliament. The document then lays out the framework for how government works. It's divided into 7 articles. Article 1 establishes the legislative branch, or Congress, made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives, and it gives it the power to make laws, collect taxes, and regulate trade. Article 2 creates the executive branch, led by the President, who enforces the laws and serves as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Article 3 sets up the judicial branch, including the Supreme Court and lower federal courts, to interpret laws and ensure they follow the Constitution. The remaining articles deal with relationships between states, the process of amending the Constitution or changing it, and how the Constitution itself is the supreme law of the land. This structure, the separation of powers, was designed to prevent any one branch from becoming too powerful. Each branch has its own authority, but also checks the others. For example, the President can veto a law passed by Congress, but Congress can override that veto. The courts can strike down a law if it violates the Constitution. This system of checks and balances remains a defining feature of American government today, one that has never been more tested than it is today. The framers of the Constitution knew their document wouldn't be perfect forever, so they built in a way to change it through amendments. Article 5 explains how that works. Amendments can be proposed in 2 ways: by a 2/3 vote in houses of Congress, or by a constitutional convention called by 2/3 of the states, though this has never happened. To become law, an amendment then needs to be approved or ratified by 3/4 of the states. It's a difficult process, and intentionally so. The framers wanted the Constitution to be stable, not easily changed by temporary politics. In over 230 years, more than 11,000 amendments have been proposed, but only 27 have been approved. The first 10 of these, known as the Bill of Rights, guarantee essential freedoms like speech, religion, and due process. We'll talk more about those in the next episode. But some later amendments have also dramatically shaped American life, like the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, the 14th, which granted citizenship to all people born or naturalized on U.S. soil, the 19th, which gave women the right to vote, and the 26th, which lowered the voting age to 18. Some parts of the Constitution are still at the center of debates today. The Commerce Clause in Article 1 gives Congress the power to regulate trade between states, a phrase that has been used to justify everything from civil rights laws to environmental regulations. The Necessary and Proper Clause allows Congress to make laws needed to carry out its powers, even if they aren't specifically listed, giving the government flexibility to adapt to modern times. And the Supremacy Clause in Article 6 ensures that federal law overrides state law when the two are in conflict with each other, something that's often tested in debates about issues like immigration, gun control, or healthcare. even the amendment process itself is part of current discussions. Some Americans argue that it's too difficult to make constitutional changes in a modern society, while others believe that difficulty protects the country from extreme swings in power. Although it was written in the 18th century, the Constitution remains alive through interpretation. The Supreme Court plays a central role in this, deciding how the document's principles apply to today's world. This is sometimes called the idea of a living constitution, one that can evolve and change with society. Critics, however, argue for a stricter reading of the text, saying judges should interpret it only as the framers intended. The debate between these two views, flexible versus fixed interpretation, continues to shape American law and politics. The Constitution is more than just a legal document. It's a symbol of national identity. It defines not just how power is distributed, but what kind of country the United States strives to be. One founded on the rule of law, limited government, and individual rights. It's also a reminder that democracy requires constant care. The framers didn't see their work as finished, and neither should we. Every generation has had to interpret and sometimes fight over what those words mean in their own time. So as you hear debates today about freedom of speech, gun rights, or presidential powers, remember that these conversations are all rooted in this single document written back in 1787. The U.S. Constitution has survived wars, social revolutions, and massive technological change, not because it's perfect, but because it was designed to grow and adapt alongside the people it serves. In our next episode, we'll dive deeper into the Bill of Rights, exploring how the first 10 amendments transformed the Constitution from a plan of government into a promise of liberty. Thanks for listening to U.S. Government Explained. You can find more episodes, transcripts, and resources at our website, www.sharing-english.com/podcast. Don't forget to comment, share, review, and listen to more episodes of U.S. Government Explained and the Sharing English podcast every week wherever you listen to podcasts. Bye.